One day there lived a man called Walmara and his two wives. They lived on an island called Tutala in a humpy made of bark which was called a narrated. At that time, Walmara was working on a fishing net made of string from trees. The wives would gather the string and give it to him while he sat in the shelter working. They also had two sons called Birubiru and Gandarangala, who were good fishermen. Every day they'd catch big mobs of every kind of fish, while mothers would go and gather bush tucker like yams and bush fruit. But the sons were greedy. They'd eat most of the fish before they came back to camp. The mother and father knew that they weren't sharing their catch. This happened day after day. While the father was working on the fishing net and the mother was gathering tucker, those greedy boys would eat their catch. One day the father realized that the net he was working on was getting bigger, and he called for his sons to come into the shelter to see if the net was big enough that it would wrap around them. It almost fit around, so he said to his sons that he was nearly finished. He told them to go and to come back to try it again tomorrow. So the next day came, and the same thing happened as usual. The mothers went food gathering, the sons went fishing, and the father finished the net. This time, when the sons came back after eating most of the fish, the father decided that it was his chance to have his revenge. So he called them back into the shelter. He then wrapped them in the net and slowly sneaked out of the humpy, making sure that the mothers didn't see him. He took them down to the sea and threw them into the water with the net still wrapped around them. That afternoon, the mothers returned from their food gathering and divided the food as usual for the father and their sons. They waited for a while for their sons to turn up, but they never came back. So they asked the father, "Where are our boys?" "I don't know," replied the father. "They are probably still out there fishing." Soon the night began to fall, and the mothers became really worried. So they got some paper bark from nearby trees for torches and went to look for them. They searched for 2 days before they headed to the ocean where the boys usually fished. And when they got there, the submerged net with the boys floated to the surface. The mothers burst into tears, crying for their sons and swearing at their husband. They untied the net and carried the boys back to the camp. There they wrapped the boys in bark and placed them on a platform up in a tree, still crying. The mothers decided to wait until the husband went to sleep and then planned to take their revenge. When they heard him snoring, they knew he was asleep, so they slowly sneaked out of the shelter, taking some hot ashes with them. They collected more bark and put the hot ashes in the bark and started blowing until it burst into flame. Then they lit both sides of the shelter to make sure he couldn't escape. Then father inside was calling out to them. "What are you doing, my dear wives?" he called as the fire got bigger and bigger until they couldn't hear him anymore. Then, when the fire went out and they could see him lying burnt with glowing embers all over him, 3 days he started moving again. The wives saw that he was moving and said, "Look, our husband is still alive. He's moving." He moved a couple of times, then he rolled over and curled up into a semicircle. In the darkness, he started to glow brighter and brighter. Then he jumped into a tree, but fell to the ground. He jumped again and landed on a branch. Then he jumped from branch to branch, tree to tree, until he was at the top of the highest tree. Then he said, "You people are now called Guyamirrilil, and I will be called Guyamirrilil. Guyamirrilil means that people will now die forever, and Guyamirrilil means that he will die but come back to life as the new moon every month."